For those of you who don't know me, I am Pamela Aaralyn, a clear conduit channel since age 5. I do trans channeling, Trans. That's more of semi-conscious channeling. I go in and out of consciousness at times into trance, but it's rare. I don't prefer trance because I like to be in control of what comes through and how it comes through and be able to learn and observe from my body's language. So thank you. I love you. I love you too, Paul. I love all of you. There's so much love today. I was just talking to management about St. Francis and about how it's going. And it was really, really an interesting experience because I almost channeled him for Valentine's Day because I just really wasn't very familiar with this being. I've only channeled him twice in my lifetime, and it was so long ago that I just really didn't have much of a connection. So I started attempting to connect to him around February. And oh my goodness, I will tell you what I just told my management team. I said, have you ever been around someone that's so loving and you're not really used to that amount of love being thrown in your direction? So I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like it's making my stomach turn. So for those of you with self-love issues and you're working through it, hang in there with me. We all have that as empaths, it seems. And it's just one of those things that he's here, to help us with. And, as I was working through speaking with him for the past few hours, I felt like crying. There was a lot of release coming through. I thought when I first started connecting to him, oh, this is going to be easy. This is the patron saint of love and peace and liberation and so much that he has to teach us, that for sure he's so gentle and so loving that I thought this is just going to be a breeze, right? No. The past few days in my life have been absolute hell. So for those of you who are struggling there with self-love and you're working on that, it is not going to be an easy challenge for you either. You're going to feel that self-love coming through as well, because he doesn't just show compassion, forgiveness. He has so much unconditionality that when he was working with me and he said, oh, you want to learn about unconditional love. You expect unconditional love. Can you give it? Do you understand love without labels? Do you understand love without expectations? Do you understand love without roles? Do you understand how liberation applies to love? And of course, I thought I did. We all do, because everyone wants liberation. Everyone wants to understand unconditionality and say that they don't judge or that they are interested in forgiveness and compassion. When it comes right down to it, living through it with connecting with St. Francis of Assisi was a profound experience, to say the least. And you really look at love from the inside out. I was explaining this a little bit in my class. I teach channeling classes. And just yesterday, at the end of a series of channeling classes, and I'll share this with you as well, if I can find the tool that I was using. Yes, my glasses case. So basically speaking, you feel like this, and you kind of look at it and you're like, okay, examining love. What's in there, right? St. Francis kind of does this. He opens you up and then yanks everything that needs to be seen from the inside out. And you just kind of feel empty and vulnerable and transparent, raw. This is just me trying to explain my experiences with him from a very simple perspective without going into too much depth. But I just kept saying while I was pulling him through all day, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. And you all know what that means because you know me. It means I'm going to cry. So how can I explain him? He basically has pulled me through all of his life experiences from adolescence until death. They had to do with joy, forgiveness, compassion, grace, liberation, and finally surrender. And surrender in a way that no matter what anyone did to him, because he did not have the perspective that anything was happening to him, he had a perspective that everything was happening for him. that the entire universe was nothing but love, and that everything was conspiring in a way that meant release of all expectations. It meant renunciation of everything, and I do mean everything: money, people's perspectives, relationships if need be, sexual relationships. He was definitely celibate. Everything from every perspective. If it meant something to him, he would release it, because he had a belief that if you were dependent upon anything, and we examine that as well today, dependency from all perspectives, if you are dependent upon anything, then that owns you. And the way that he described it to me was, okay, say you are in a relationship and you believe that you are an independent being, but you have a fear of losing that person. If you have a fear that you can't be with that person for losing yourself, then that fear owns you. Basically, no matter how you look at it, if you have any dependence, then that entire relationship as a label owns you, versus being with that person from an independent, complete perspective. So he taught me about completion in a way that I'd never really observed before, because I view myself as an immensely independent person. So for those of you who are looking at that and applying it to relationships, whether they be personal or professional or anything, lose attachment to any outcomes or expectations of what you think love is. Liberation means trust through all variables, through all perspectives, through anything that you believe is going to happen to you. That's a mentality that in and of itself isn't a label. When he left, he was a very rich man when he was, younger, in his adolescence, well into young adulthood. He was born into nobility, a very noble family in France. Basically, he left his father's domain and castle while renunciating everything, including his family. They did not understand his spiritual practices. They thought that he was going mad in his awakening. He had a very unusual spiritual awakening, so he has had a lot to say about spiritual awakening that you're more than welcome to ask me about in this channeling. But when he was going through his spiritual awakening, he was so full of love and bliss consciousness that he would witness to people half naked. He would, when he left his father's castle, he had very little clothes on. He was almost naked. He had on a hair shirt. He had renunciated clothes. He had renunciated money. He had renunciated sex. And he just said, okay, if I own those things own me. So it was a very unique way of awakening that people remember throughout all of human history. So basically speaking, if you have questions about your abundance, your relationship with money, your relationship in general, personally or professionally, family-wise, if you have questions about spirituality and religion, this is a man who took, because he was told, according to what he told me, he was told to rebuild the church. And he thought it just meant the church outside of his small little town. It meant a system. He, with love, and by his example of renunciation and liberation and trust, rebuilt the entire system in a way. That was his goal, was to say, you know what, we don't need systems. He had a full respect for anyone who had a belief in the church, the Roman Catholic Church, but he turned it inside out. To go into sainthood and to become a beloved saint of the Roman Catholic Church, while simultaneously saying, I don't firmly believe in your organization, took no fear. The man had no fear. He did not believe in rules. I thought at first that I had very little in common with him, and just about an hour or so ago, we were discussing that. And he said, well, you do the same thing. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, you renunciate yourself all the time. You have no problem with standing publicly and saying to people, here are my set of practices, here is what I believe in, here are all my beliefs, and now let me help you lose them and find your own beliefs. And then I just kind of stood quietly with him for a moment because I didn't know how to take that in. And then I remembered something that someone said to me a long time ago in my spiritual community. She said, what I love about you is that you are completely willing to just let go of everything that you just taught us and say, you know what, I see it from a different perspective now. Here's a new teaching. He did that all the time. So he was completely honoring his flow so that he can go into a state of liberation and no belief system owned him. You understand? So basically speaking, his entire experience of love changed the whole world. Anyone who was following him or knows about him is changed by his experience of liberation and love. So basically what he has to share today and what he has to offer today is to lose your labels, to lose your attachments, to lose all forms of dependency, to stand in your communities, to rely upon each other. He talked a lot about intentional community. That's a term that we use in our modern society. He called it brethren, brotherhood, spiritual family. There are many things that he was calling it. But we, these days in our modern communities, call it spiritual communities and intentional communities. He has had a lot to bring forth in regards to intentional community. And he said, don't be afraid to let that change. Any rules that you have are going to change along the way. You have to be transparent and in loving communication with each other at all times. And what you think is going on in your family systems, in your church systems, in your belief systems, in your relationship systems, if you believe that it's going to stay the same, then that's not trust. So he talked to me a lot about attachment to rules, expectations, regulations, systems, beliefs, and labels. So his message to you is to lose all that, stand in your transparency, because love is greater than those things. So let's move forward into your questions and answers, and let's talk to him a little bit further. He is a happy being. What can I say to you? Now's the time, by the way, to go ahead and start putting things in your questions and answers section, and we're going to go through them one by one for the next hour. Insofar as his personality, he sings a lot, he dances a lot, and then he gets very, very serious. He can go from giddy, joy, bliss consciousness, absolute crazy behavior. If anything that he thinks that is going to embarrass someone, like nakedness, no shame. When I first saw him, he was completely naked. And I'm just kind of looking like, okay, this is a first. Most beings come to me and they don't show up in human form. Most of the saints are already coming about in their light body. And while he is very glowing, he does show up completely nude with no shame attached and just full of love and joy. And then when he talks about an embodied form, and when I asked him about how humans can expect to embrace and love themselves within the bodily forms, he just dances around with glee and with silly abandon, like reckless abandon is the best way I can put it. And he says, oh, you think that's silly? Watch this. And he'll do a little jig. It's quite funny and quite silly. And he is definitely just embodying his entire nature in the same way that he was when he was in human form. So he is hilarious, funny, silly, and then when I ask him a serious question, he stops and his entire being glows. And then he just permeates the entire room that you're in or place that you're in with love, and you can't speak. When he's speaking, you can't speak. You just lose. My connection with him has been difficult because I have lost all connection to the fluid nature of how I speak. And I normally have no issues with vocal communication. But when I've been channeling him strongly this week, I haven't been as communicative as I've wanted to be. I've noticed that words don't matter as much. I've been trying to connect more with my hands and with my actions and in silence. And that's been really, really difficult for me. He's been saying, well, why do you need to talk? Why do you need to open up? Because words don't mean as much as your heart. So this has been an interesting experience, and he stands forth and he will put you, all of your beliefs, to a silent place. It's like silent mode and just love and peace. So another thing, being around him will crack open all your belief systems, and that's scary. That's scary for anyone. So when you're talking about belief systems and you have any level of emotional or conscious or subconscious attachment to those belief systems, when you're working with St. Francis of Assisi, he will rip those belief systems apart, pull them out in front of your face, and have you look at them front ways and backwards and all ways that you could possibly surmise. So let's go into your questions. So I'd like to explain a little bit more, but he is incredibly profound. The first question is about physical health and changes in the embodiment. And it is, I've been worrying about my physical health as I've noticed changes in my body. Could there be something wrong? Or is it a pattern of thinking that is causing these physical sensations to appear? What is needed to restore balance and harmony in my mind and body? Okay, St. Francis does not worry about the body at all. He is very silent in this question. Let me get deeper in just a second. He says, I don't observe physical sensations in the body because the body does not exist. The body is a part of your illusion system. It is a part of something that you are dreaming independently and together as a whole in your collectives. The body is a tool, but does it own you? Or is this just a tool for your expression? When you are in control of your tool, your body, then you will observe its changes without fear. When you don't fear death, you don't fear your body's sensations or changes. You honor it as another expression and as a tool from which you stand forth in complete allowance, trust, and liberation. Your body is here for you. You are not here for your body. To restore balance, you simply understand that it is not a concern. Your body is for you, not against you. Why should you perceive that there would be anything wrong due to changes in your sensations? Why do you perceive wrong at all? I do not perceive wrong. I have not perceived wrong. If you perceive that something is wrong, then you stand in compassion and forgiveness and love for your body, and then any of its perceived elements will work for you. When you transform from within, and your body will follow your direction. But if you continue to perceive that a change would be wrong, then that is the duality that needs release. Next question, how is the divine masculine helping the divine feminine to step into her power? He states, in your environments, there is divine masculine and divine feminine in all components of earth, in all expressions. Within your animal and plant systems, it is ecology. And you stand forth with a natural balance between plants, animals, humans, and beyond. It is all balanced. And then you don't perceive that there is more divine masculine or more divine feminine. That perception is what causes your societal breakdown within your politics, within your religions, within your systems. The perspective that there is separation is what causes you to believe in sin, which there is no such word. In my heart, there is no such word as sin. In my expressions and experiences with him, he doesn't believe that anyone needs to be in power. There is no such perception that divine masculine or divine feminine need to be in power, because he does not perceive that there is any separation. And he's trying to teach you that illusion of separation between those two concepts would be the same thing as what your systems want you to believe. because these worldly systems want you to believe in the illusion of separation, and it just doesn't exist. Do you follow me? What is the spiritual meaning of bearing the stigmata in his time and even today? He said it is the elemental mark of the Christ conscious fire. When you bear the stigmata, you do not believe that pain or suffering can be possible. I wasn't certain the meaning at this time, nor did I need to be certain, but I knew that if Christ experienced it, why not I? When I am asking him this question, I'm feeling an elemental fire come up in the palms of my hands. And it is extremely painful. And it is here in the center, but it's going down and further down and further down. Not so much, and he's reminding me that this feeling is not so much of something that can go towards like the perception of the crucifixion, because many people would say, because they believe that Jesus was crucified, that the stigmata is about something that happens based upon the belief in being crucified, you know, with nails in the hands or nails in the wrist, nails in the feet. Now, Yeshua ben Joseph formulated a different perspective. You know, crucifixion at that time, even though it did occur, in his perspective and in St. Francis's perspective, it wasn't something that caused death. It caused a near-death experience instead, and a full divine awakening to the Christ heart. So Yeshua ben Joseph fully lived through that from his perspective. So for further information, you can look at my YouTube channelings, and that's just something that St. Francis is asking me to review with you so that you don't associate it so much with, okay, Jesus is having pain, you know, Yeshua is having pain in his hands and his wrist because he was crucified, and we need to remember pain. Because of our belief systems and because we believe that a crucifixion happened, the stigmata represents our belief that it happened, and our belief that we can suffer based upon other people's labelings and based upon other people's judgments and expectations, based upon the entire concept of sin and that salvation even needs to occur to begin with. St. Francis, along with Yeshua, share the belief that there is no such sin, that sin in the perception and definition that we have coined, meaning sin being we've done something bad and we need to cleanse it. Sin only means you miss something. You miss the mark. And what that means from a divine perspective is, if you miss the mark in the stigmata, you get the mark because you believe that you need suffering in order to cleanse you or save you of sins. A stigmata is a burning through that belief system. It literally feels like your hands are burning, and it's like, wait a minute. What if by grace you are perfect to begin with, and grace causes you to no longer need that expression and belief in salvation? For people who stand with full trust that suffering does not mean death, and full trust in Christ consciousness and in their heart that they are perfect by grace, they will receive the burning elemental nature of the stigmata to just sort of burn that whole belief away. It's a representation, and it is a trust because it does hurt. It really does hurt. So, yeah, some of you who are empaths are feeling you're burning and buzzing with that question. Shield a little bit. It is painful. I have an immense pain tolerance, so I'm bearing with it because I'm starting to feel it in my feet right now, and I'm just bearing with it. So shield a little bit. That's what I'm doing. It's not a bad thing, guys. It's just something where you say, you know what? This just represents my divine connection to the Christ heart and no more suffering. And because people believe and causing suffering, and we believe that suffering owns us, we get that label if we choose it. The stigmata is a calling. This is something also that he's saying. We choose that calling to open us up to the belief that we can release all the labels, all the definitions, all the markings, so to say. So if you miss the mark, that means sin cannot exist. You don't have any marks. You don't go in that direction. You don't even believe in marks at some point. It's an interesting thing to create a mark and a pain in order to symbolize releasing of the mark and the pain. But because we formulated a belief system that adhered to the belief in suffering and that someone needed to die for us, the stigmata represents that. It represents the belief and release of all systems and all labels. When you go through the purpose of surrender, you will eventually at one point in time receive the stigmata. Very, very painful, but also you lose the belief in pain. Hopefully that answers your question. It was kind of complicated. I have been diagnosed with macular degeneration. How can I cure it? He states, I urge you to seek deeper within your heart expression. You are perfect as is. What if a body is a tool? And he's showing me how it feels to have it. And he asked me to close my eyes, and there's a film kind of over my eyes, and it's thick. And when I'm opening my eyes, everything's fuzzy right now. I can see from a certain peripheral point, but not the one that I had that I normally have. So I have to find a new one, and it's more front and center. He's just showing me how it feels to have it. And he says, okay, do you trust, or are you going to narrow your vision to one pointed center, Yes, that's the phrase. Because when you narrow your vision as it can only be this way or that way, everything else begins to blur out. Can you look deeper at the meaning and the association of this perceived illness? And then the fuzziness will clear, and your clarity point, this vantage point that's front and center right now, will no longer need to be an expression, and then you will get more of a spiritual peripheral vision, and you will see things from all angles, from all sides. Oh, that's a good question. The next one is, why did you turn away from worldly things? What was the trigger? He showed me this earlier today, and he's showing me in my mind right now an image where he was coming back from war, and he didn't go. He said, I was called to war. I even had a special suit of armor made for me by my family. My father was very proud. My mother was terrified. I had a very close relationship with my mother. I was called to war, and I was riding on my horse with my beautiful, grandiose suit of armor, because that is the only term that I can use. This was full ego. And I was told not to go. I saw a bird of peace standing next to me, and I dropped from my horse on my knees. Upon my return, I could not get back on my horse because I felt equal to and in love with the divinity of the horse, and the horse was my equal. The horse was love. I was love. Why should I go in this direction? Why should I kill anything? I was conscious of the ants underneath the earth in my feet. I was conscious of the wind, my breath being one with the wind, and I knew that peace was the only answer and love was the only answer. He continues, at this point, I released my connection to worldly possessions. I released my connection to worldly beliefs. And the only freedom is love. And the only way to have freedom is to release all beliefs, to release anything that would own me. And I did this simply because I had the call of the Christ in my heart. On my return home, I saw a leper. Prior to this event, I was repulsed by lepers. I was repulsed by anything that the world considered ugly. And I fell to my knees and I kissed his feet and I kissed his hands. And he returned my kiss. And I held no belief that I could be harmed. And I held no belief that anything was ugly, that everything was pure beauty, that all of the animals of the earth, all of the beings of the earth, that no such condition or disease could arise, that nothing is wrong. Oh, you have a question about water and your son's purpose. What is my son's purpose? I believe he is here to save the water. He said all children are of the water, and all children are of the earth, and all children are of the air, all children are of the ether. We are all of the elements. Many children that are born in your era, in this era, embody the divine Christ heart and the divine Christ mind. With the combination of the two, it is indeed possible that your child, and many who are born in this era, are here to cleanse and provide clarity, and with the element of water to provide peace and provide unity and stand as a bridge of consciousness for all other beings. This child and many more could prevent war. Oh, questions are just piling up. I need to move faster, but he is very overwhelming to channel, so I'm doing the best I can. Just try not to cry. How is it that the negativity of Earth is affecting the whole universe when duality is meant to be an illusion and we are using it for experience and growth? If duality is not judged, why are so many beings called to transform it? He said, my child, of course duality is judged. Judgment is within duality. Of course this still occurs. That is why you have the call. The illusion is necessary because you continue to choose it. Do you continue to choose for it to be necessary, or will you continue to release, or will you choose to release it today? The purpose of Earth is to expand with experience and growth, and you choose expansion. And then you release your choices and you release the need to expand any longer from duality when you leave these bodies. These are difficult concepts to understand and accept when you are in a body. But of course there is judgment that is still in duality. If you choose to perceive that negativity exists, you will align it with the act of suffering. He reminds me of something he shared with me earlier today when I was in the car and I was trying to connect with him, and I was running some errands and I had so much to do and I was trying to avoid connecting to him. The reason why is because there's so much love that it was just overwhelming. And he was telling me that when he left his father's castle, that he had very few clothes, and then he was robbed of his clothes. He had to beg for some food, and he does not like begging, but he did anyway, just for that brief moment. He would only eat to the extent that he could to live. And as people were taking away, as robbers where people were robbing him of his clothes and taking the very little food that he had, and they beat him. They beat him harshly, and he was bruised and in pain. And then he stepped into a frequency of joy. He said, oh, it's a body, it is my tool. This body is my tool to express. Do I choose to be in pain or do I choose to dance? He got up out of the ditch from which people were beating him, and he began to dance, and he stepped so quickly into the frequency of joy and bliss consciousness that he did not feel pain. And he's no more special than you or I. He reminds us of this. If he can transcend pain that quickly, we can too. He chose not to believe that this was suffering. So of course you're called to transform it. And if you feel the call, follow it, honor it, he states. Thank you for your life testimony left on record. He nods. It has been very encouraging to learn who you are. My question is about your baptism. You were baptized as a child. What is your viewpoint on baptism? He says to choose one perspective or the other to say that it is good or bad is what is wrong with your collectives. If it is good for you, honor that with love. If you feel that it is a representation of something that does not serve you, then do not be baptized. Do what honors you. Do what calls to you in your divine Christ heart. He was really good at this, by the way, and the way that he described his perspective with speaking with and trying to go within into the Roman Catholic Church and bring them to peace. He did not agree. He felt that they were very corrupt. Yet he could honor and feel Christ within the walls of the church simultaneously by understanding that man was acting in a very corrupt way. He could still go within and say, yet, if people believe that Christ is there, then Christ is there. So it was a very interesting perspective of him not wanting to choose anything being good or bad. He just wanted love and peace in all perspectives. How can I learn to love foreign money that is buying up our town in the San Francisco Bay Area? I know it's based in fear and I'm having a hard time accepting it. He said, I implore you to consider, how does this affect you right now? Does it affect you at all? It only affects you the moment it chooses to. When do you believe that this will personally affect you? How is this concordant with a belief system that you are safe, that all is love? To worry about things that have not been a concern. To worry at all, to perceive a concern is not aligned with the Christ heart. Have faith. If you doubt, faith is the answer. The true doubt and the true fear is within yourself and your consciousness. You doubt your ability to survive. You doubt your ability to transform. You doubt your ability to change and to survive change. I asked him some things about that too when I was connecting to him this week in regards to currency exchanges, currency change rather, in regards to how our currency is traded with other countries. And he said, how do you choose to believe that it affects you? How do you choose to believe that it affects your environment? Money is another tool that, if not used with love and with moderation, it too will own you. If you fear money, it owns you. If you feel what happens because of money, it then owns you and controls you, and you are then disempowered. There is no liberation within this perspective. If you choose that money is safe, then money is safe with you, and you are safe with money as your tool, for you are in control of this tool. He urged the earth to examine their belief systems individually and collectively about money. He did not urge that we need to renunciate any further. That was a belief system that he had in his human perspective. To renunciate something fully like money would, to be at this point, would be similar to stating, I renunciate everything. I renunciate myself. If you are in a collective and you need a tool and you feel that you need a tool, then use the tool positively, with love, with respect, and with moderation. When you eat food, you consume food with love, with respect, with moderation. Food is a tool. Money is a tool. Sex can be a tool. Sex can be a connection. Sex is love, and if it is nothing that is born from love, then it too owns you. Moderate your bodies, moderate your desires, and understand that sex should be given and exchanged with love. Money should be given and exchanged with love. Food is consumed and exchanged with love. Next question, I would like to know how to keep our humanness in our experience while getting a higher perspective of our human. Okay, I'm going to redo that because there's too many words in there. I would like to know how to keep our humanness in our experience while receiving a higher perspective of human experience. I'm trying. Give me a minute. Sometimes when a word is duplicated, I get too much into my head to be able to channel. I'll continue with your question and maybe this will be easier. He's not great with words either, except for when he steps fully in my presence. And I don't want a trance today because he is so profound, but it looks like I might need to trance, which means I don't know how I'm going to read these questions. So give me a minute. As of how to keep our emotional involvement and compassion while we are realizing it is all an illusion or limiting beliefs that make us suffer. I'm sorry, Alina, it's too much. Can you, if you're in chat with me, can you just expand? Because what's happening to me right now is the channel is that I'm not understanding when things are too wordy because I'm operating fully with him in Christ's heart and I cannot understand this question. It's like it's too in the cerebral for me to come up. I can't pull the question into my logic right now. So I'm just going to ask you to rephrase it and put it back in the questions or put it in the chat because I am watching chat right now in hopes that you will respond. I'm so sorry about that. I'm just not in my cerebral right now. I'm fully right here. And I'm going to go to a more simple question in the meantime. Please help me understand, why do I need to suffer that much to learn about my self-love? He says, of course you don't need to suffer. You move forth without suffering and you release suffering in the moment that you believe you are suffering. Replace with love, replace with trust, transform, stand forth in faith. Faith and hope are the two belief systems that are required in order to transmute and transform from suffering into love. Doubt is your crutch. You don't need a crutch. Walk on your own 2 feet, move forward, and just trust. Just have faith. Have faith that you can be loved and that you can love. And do not attach labels or meaning. Don't attach names either. Simply allow your heart perspective to expand. In that moment, ask for the Christ heart to expand from within you personally. And then nothing is external, and then suffering cannot exist. There is no such place for suffering in the Christ heart if you call it from within you and expand from here. Someone is asking who else is in the room with me. I will answer this question once. I have guests in my channelings all the time to sort of keep me accountable. There's always friends and family here. So hopefully that answers. There's always someone here. Is there a great meditation or some tools that can be used to become more self-loving? Ways to tap deeply into the heart space. He said you invite and invoke the Christ presence by asking, by releasing fear, by trusting, inviting trust into your heart center. stand forth within your elements, especially the sun. The sun glows with love. The sun glows with transformation. And within all of the elements, whether they be sun, water, earth, metal, wood, ether, all of the above, all of the elements that you have created, and even the ones of which you are not aware within your cosmos, can help you transform into your heart center. He is mentioning, he's showing me a picture of the sun, and he says he did write a poem within a book, and the word sun was within it. And he wrote about the elements rather in this, and it's very well known. And he's showing me in metaphor form, so I don't know the name of it, but it's pretty much something that he wrote to help you connect. And it is in poetry fashion, and it can be used in meditation as well if you repeat the poetry. So that was a tool that he wrote for that purpose. How can we explore other past lives we have shared with our pets? I knew someone was going to ask about pets, and when I first began to connect with him, there were plenty of birds and animals and deer and cats, and it was very, very interesting. He states, your pets have changed in their expressions. Initially, they came in their own consciousness, but they were helping you and they are transforming with you. Now it's a little bit of both. Within your domesticated pets, honor their divinity. Let them roam. Let them experience liberation freely. Do not be concerned so much about death and suffering and lack of safety. Because pets have been many beings, you have been pets, you have been rocks, you have been trees, you have been all of the tiny components of water. You have been a fragment of the sun. You have been star matter. Because pets have been the same, they are you and you are them. A pet is a reflection and an expression of your own soul. Connect to yourself more deeply, and you will connect to your pet more deeply. The past does not exist, nor is it required. I ask you to implore more deeply about your need to know, and to release your hungering for knowledge. Disconnect from your brain centers. The heart does not require knowledge. The heart simply trusts what is. In every waking moment, in every sleeping moment, the heart does not require anything but elements from the earth and the sun and the moon and the water. Pets require love, and they understand this divinity. And when you learn from them, you connect with you. But the past is not relevant, nor is it needed. It does not exist. Give me a second. What is his view on A Course in Miracles? He said, in my time, I was not a reader of the books. I completely understand. Just had to say that. I was not a reader of the books. I did not transform from knowledge in the brain. At this perspective, I understand your need for knowledge and your need for guidance. I urge you to begin here. if this path within this book, within this beautiful sacred text, and it is sacred and it is channeled, if this path calls from you, calls to you from the Christ heart, then honor that, honor the call. I believe in miracles. My life was full of miracles and still is. In his life, there was so much suffering that, and he didn't perceive it as suffering. Everyone else looked at him and wondered how he survived. But he was so full of love, so full of bliss, that his every waking moment was a miracle. He explained to me that he found miracles constantly. In every breath, he found a miracle. He would wake up and in my astral experiences with him yesterday, just last night actually, I had an experience where I was waking up as him, and the sun came through the window, and he viewed every single ray of the sun with so much beauty that he cried over the rays of the sun hitting his face, and he felt every single one of them. And there were just hundreds of just tiny little rays of sun hitting my face when he allowed me to stand forth in his body and be him. And then he, looked outwards, and this is when he was rebuilding a church. This was in the beginning stages of his journey. He was rebuilding a tiny stone church in his town, in Assisi. And it was only about halfway done, and many of he called them the brethren or the brothers, the people that were in the walls here, and it was just about wintertime, and the whole town was worried about them being cold and freezing to death. And he would wake up and be warmed by the sun, and the sun's rays just edified his entire body. And it felt as if when I was him, that I was being completely nourished, without anything, without any need for food, without any need for water, without anything. And it was strange, and I didn't wake up hungry. And there was that, habitual thing when you have kids where you feed them. And of course I woke up and I fed my children, and I ate because my kids ate, but I'm like, wow, I really don't need to eat. I feel completely edified, which is a strange thing for me. But so many people were so concerned about how he was going to nourish himself, how he was going to go forth without the need for anything, if he would freeze to death. And all he was concerned about was the beauty in everything, and the love in everything, and the nourishment in everything, whether it be the sun's rays, the water that he would drink. He would gather dewdrops from nearby flowers and have just a few drops, and then not need anything else and not get dehydrated. It's a very interesting experience. Next question. Please talk about how I can forgive myself so that I can forgive others. I'm stuck on how to do this authentically. When you observe that something is wrong or sinful or bad, then you require forgiveness. What if you could back up to releasing the observation, the need that, the belief and the need to pronounce, I don't know that word, to choose a different word. No. The need to pronounce that you must be perfect. When you ignite the Christ heart within you, you release all pronunciations. You don't pronounce to the earth that you are perfect. Not that you ever consciously believe as such, but if you believe that things are wrong, that things are bad, that you are not significant, that you are not worthy, then do you even believe that grace has ever existed? When you understand the nature of grace, then you will understand that there is compassion, there is time, there is presence, and effortlessly you will understand that sin did not exist. There was no wrong, there was no bad, there was no necessity, there was no belief that you were ever perfect. There was no belief that things were right or wrong or good or bad. As a child, you frolic through the meadow, through the grass, through the flowers. You play. You are innocent. You are beautiful. And no one would say this child is not beautiful. No one would say, child, do not play. No one would say these things. No one would say, child, forgive yourself, for you are bad. And if they did, this does stand for an immediate correction. This is not conscious within the child nature. They are not conscious until they are told. Observe from the child perspective, from the perspective of innocence and joy, and then you will understand that there was never a need for forgiveness within the laws of grace. How do I let go of attachment to the need for abundance? This is fear. This is your mindset. This is your pattern of thinking that requires release. You are addicted to a pattern of thinking, to an addiction to lack. If nothing owns you, what do you lack? Does money own you? Do you need it to survive? Does the earth not provide? Does source not provide? If you believe that you are provided for at all times, you are not attached to your level of abundance, for you are not labeling. You are not advising yourself from your heart center that anything is in need. You simply are. It simply is. You simply are love, and you are provided for, and source will provide at all times exactly what you need in the moment of the now. Artists understand. Paupers understand. Many understand. In this moment they are provided for. Release your attachment in your mindset to belief in lack. If you do not believe that you are lacking at all, ever, then any abundance that is created will be received with gratitude and given in benevolence. And this heart-centered circle of divinity will continue. You give, you receive. You don't lack in this tiny moment after the giving. Some of you will say, oh no, I have given and now I lack. This is a step down in your thinking. There is no moment of lack, because again, you will receive and then you will give and then you will receive. If you wish for abundance, give exactly what you wish for. If you feel that you cannot give financially, give in some other capacity. Give the exact amount of time, the exact amount of effort. If you truly have faith and you have a tool of money, then give this exact amount of money. This is the ultimate faith. This brings me to me again. Sorry, I'm going so much in and out of trancing in this one that I can barely keep up with reviewing your questions. This brings me to the connection about money when someone was asking me earlier last week about his belief in tithing. He did not always tithe to the church. He would tithe to beggars in the street. He would tithe to his brothers, or his brethren as he called them. So it was about the act of the giving. It was about the spirit of benevolence, where you are trusting so much that you're like, sure, I'll give the very little thing that I have. I'll give the shirt off my back if someone else needs it. If someone needed a shirt, he would rip it off his back and give it to him and go shirtless in the rain and in the cold until Source provided for another shirt. That is faith. And it happened. People were constantly just giving to him and giving to him and giving to him. And he wouldn't keep it. He would only take what he needed and give back in that moment. What is the best way to clear mind blocks? He said, by releasing your belief that the mind is separate from the heart. What if the mind and the heart could become one? Separation is but an illusion. And when you understand that Christ's mind is Christ's heart, then you utilize each of them together, not one more so than the other. And within the Christ mind, you understand the logic that is necessity, the necessity of survival in a duality environment. But within the heart, there are many times when you follow without knowledge, without books, without religions, without politics, without a platform of safety. You just follow what you feel in any given moment, and then your mind too will become one with your heart. And when there is oneness within you, there is no further need to worry. I'm kind of going back to Alina's question because I see that she expanded upon it in chat, and she says, sometimes I struggle to be empathetic with people when I know suffering is not real and there's no death. Okay. He says, I invite you to stand deeper into your heart center. This is also from lack and from within the space and fear that you can be too empathetic, that you can be too giving. I invite you to honor what is required. And when you examine grace and the universal laws of grace, then your heart feels that someone does not require deservingness. Who is worthy or not? Who examines these definitions even? Because that is duality. When you understand grace, no one needs or requires deservingness. Love just is. You give and you love. With or without deservingness is of no significance or matter. How do you accumulate money with no attachment for the need or want for it? He brings me back to the metaphor and the example of the circle of giving, and he's moving his hands like this through mine. And he said, because you understand that it is going to leave the moment it comes, and it will leave the moment it comes, and you trust that more will come. And there is then no accumulation, for the moment it is received, it is given. This is the cycle of trust. From the view of renunciation, how does St. Francis see the law of abundance, the law of attraction, as taught, I'm going to repeat this because there were some typos. From the view of renunciation, how does St. Francis see the law of attraction as taught in the 21st century? Okay. I don't understand or apply any belief in rules. Within the sacred divine laws, they are there as guidance systems. They are there to guide, like a blueprint to your divine heart and your divine Christ mind. They are there as guidance. But please remember your divinity. You are God's. You are all the same God. You are all the same source. You are all beautiful pieces of the Christ heart. And within this perspective, everything is a mirror, but nothing is a law. And if you perceive the law as that of punishment, then it no longer serves you. And that is not trust, because punishment should not exist. God is not wrathful or vengeful. Someone said in chat, I have given money, lots of it, and now I'm in debt. He said debt is a perception of lack. Please explain free will. I'm trying to figure it out. When do we have free will and when don't we? From my experience, I've been trying a million times to change the things I never could. Hang on. Let me know when I ground out again and when the microphone gets better. We're good. Okay. Let's try that again. Please explain free will. I'm trying to figure it out. When do we have free will and when don't we? From my experience, I've been trying millions of times to change the things and I never could. He said, you are mistaking free will with resistance. Free will is a concept that exists in this reality when you understand that you are a creator. When you maximize this concept, this tool, then you are not trying. You are not standing in your actions. The universe simply conspires within you, and then you act based upon your divine Christ mind because you are listening. Free will is active when you listen from your heart and when you simply feel and act from your heart center. Free will does not apply in your best interest when you are saying, I'm trying. Free will simply is. Why would you try to change anything? Free will is more active when you are in compassion and acceptance of all that is, and you no longer perceive that any of this is bad or wrong, because then there is no need to change, because you do not perceive evil. Why do all representations of St. Francis have a bird or other animals? He said, I perceive all beings as one, and this is why they responded to me then and now. When you perceive oneness with all of nature, then you too shall have the same reaction and response. This is the perspective because I strongly connected to animals. The story of the wolf was true. It is glorified from the egoic human perspective, but there was a truth to understanding that even an animal that you would perceive as wild and untamed, that was killing people in our village, if you speak to animals from your Christ mind, then no harm can be done. I held no fear of death. And truly, within the perspective of no fear, no suffering, no death, then this animal held no place to harm me. When you believe in no harm, then all animals will perceive that you cannot harm them, for this is their divine truth and yours. And this is a shared reality in that time, in that moment. I noticed that too with him, by the way, that There was so much connection to nature and animals. It's the first time I saw him, he was naked and there were birds all around him. Oh, okay. In chat, someone said, so if we end up destroying the planet, that's not bad or evil. I struggle understanding that. He said, that is because you believe that time exists and that something can be fully created or fully destroyed. Everything exists in its divine perfection. What you would be perceiving as creating or destroying is but an illusion. And when you leave this body, you will perceive and understand that Earth was a dream. Earth has always been a dream. Reality is not here. Therefore, Earth does not exist. I have a deep love for animals and feel that all pets who have been with me here are a part of me. He is nodding. And when I leave this earth, will my animals be with me? He said, within your belief system, yes. Your belief in your dream continues. This is what occurs after death. How did you discover your fearlessness? He said, I transformed within my specific awakening, within the Christ mind and the Christ heart. I knew that death did not exist, and I simply no longer feared. If you believe that death cannot exist because you believe that you are living an illusion, then you will hold no fear. And it is that simple. What religions are true or not to follow? Religion, politics, governmental systems are all just that, systems of your own creation. If you believe that they are bad, then you create that and honor that perspective. If you believe that they are good, then you create that and honor that perspective. There is not one that is good or bad. It is all simply unreal. That's a loaded question. I'm going to go for it. I have met my twin flame 10 years ago, and the connection is immense, and I truly love him unconditionally. I have two big concerns. I am married to another, and my twin flame is a narcissist. He said, are you sure you want to go for that? And I'm laughing because he's challenging me. He said, what is your perspective of love and pain? Have you combined them? If you have, you will attract narcissism. Do you believe that you can be hurt? Do you believe that love can be permeated with suffering? Do you believe that love can be imperfect? Then you will attract narcissism. This is the state of heart within empaths. It can be healed if you understand that love is conditional if you are on this planet. Would you strive for agape? Would you trust unconditionality? You can. But understand that labels, restrictions confine you. Perhaps you could stand to sit within yourself for a moment and say, why do I need anything? Why do I require the label of marriage? Why do I require the label of the narcissist? Can I release all of this? The elemental nature of the twin flame existence will reflect within you everything and pull out of you anything that does not serve. And this is true. And this is a divine nature of the Christ heart truth. Release all labels. What do you feel? What do you want to feel? Continue in that, and all else is perfect. Is there a place on the earth where we would be closer to St. Francis? He said no one place was home. Home is your heart. I have been feeling so separated and distant from God lately. What can I do to change this? Ask for the divine heart calling. Ask specifically. Within some of your texts, it is stated that if you go into your prayer, if you are in the privacy of God, and you call this your prayer closets, your meditation, you call this many things, this sacred space, this reverence, when your mind, your body, your spirit are all the temple of the sacred divine flame of truth. Envision this sacred divine flame. Pull from its violet nature, call upon Saint Germain, and ask for truth. Ask, inquire. Is separation real? You know this answer. You need to feel this answer. And all you should do is but ask. Question in chat, are humans destroying the planet? If you believe that they are, then this is a divine truth. Look deeper. Again, this planet is your creation, which is an illusion. It is not reality. Nothing can be fully created or fully destroyed. It is all your divine act of play, your divine act of learning, your divine truth of expansion. And when you are done expanding, you will leave this planet. This planet is not divine, sacred truth. It is your created illusion. You created this existence. And when you are ready, and when you cease the belief that suffering and war and pain can exist, then it will no longer exist. How do we know we are in the right spiritual community? When you feel a sense of trust that you can speak from your divine sacred heart without punishment, and you will be heard, and your requests will be listened to. You will be felt, and all are honored, and each being trusts the other. I am a Catholic, and it is still difficult to understand the concept of self-love when the main goal that we ought to have is complete selflessness, and to always think of the other first before we think of ourselves. I feel sort of guilty when I think of my needs first. Can you help me resolve this? He's moving my hands again. It's back this, giving, receiving, giving, receiving. If you do not receive, what would you have to give? Consider this. You may give first, but then you must receive in order to give again. And this is self-love. Your cup must be full before the water can be poured into another's cup. Otherwise, you will be drained. And life would then feel empty. Receive and give. receive and give. It's not about selfishness or complete self-love or complete giving. It is the cycle of love, the cycle of life, the cycle of benevolence, which leads to grace. What is your best advice for being happy? He said, dance, joy. In my incarnation, I was a gleeful man. And release of shame. Shame cannot exist within full divine happiness. He laughs a lot, by the way, when he's not being super serious. He's being silly and laughing, which is really, I've noticed that's a trademark of some of the Christ mind and Christ heart-centered beings. Someone else expanded upon their question about the twin flame. He said, I feel, or she said, I feel my love and my help can change him. He says that is not agape, because that implies that there need be a change. In true agape, no one expects the other to change. There are no expectations. There is no me or you. There is only us. And we can state what we desire, but love is. And there are no expectations attached thereto. Why should you require to change him? You simply love him. Can we ask for your assistance in enhancing or using energy healing gifts and channeling to work on animals? He said, yes, and call upon the divine sacred heart. Utilize the violet flame. If you contact me along with Saint Germain, that is a powerful combination. Within many belief systems, this will work. But what is your belief system? Follow your belief system. Connect to the divine sacred heart within you, as this best connects with animals and nature. And if you believe in the violet flame, call upon Saint Germain and visualize the violet flame as an extension of your own heart through your hands. When he does this, he kind of moved my hand away from my mouth, so I was going to move on to a next question, and he moved it. And he asked that you put your hands here in front of your heart in this fashion, kind of in a prayer mode, but not quite, just touching the fingertips and then pushing outward, imagining that the flame is your breath. You begin to push outward from your divine sacred heart. So within the violet flame, this is what we're working with. We're pushing the violet energy in this direction towards the animal. So if an animal is underneath you, you're going to be pushing down like that. If the animal is in front of you, you push outward towards their heart, but you're going heart to heart with it. So you're going down into their heart. Or if they're in front of you, forward into their heart from yours with every exhaled breath. How does one awaken the Kundalini? He said, by asking with the nature of spiritual inquiry, if you are ready, you will receive. What does one do when your heart wants you to follow one path to love, but your rational mind tells you it's the wrong path? He says this is a perceived separation between heart and mind. Mind, Christ's heart are one. When you combine the two, there may be initial confusion, but confusion is born from fear. Your mind is not telling you something that is true, because your mind says something is wrong, and there is no wrong. That is all in the rational ego. Dismiss this and ask your heart again from the perspective that mind and heart are one, and you will feel your answer, and there will be no attachments. There will be no words such as right or wrong or good or bad in a true divine sacred heart answer. Is it true that Padre Pio is one of his most recent incarnations? He nods and he said, and I work within many. So he's not the only one. No. Okay. Can we heal our belief systems? He said, my question to you is, when will you no longer require them? Someone is asking, is he a twin soul with Pope Francis? He doesn't believe in the concept of the twin soul as being only one. He states that he is observing and learning and watching Pope Francis, and has been, but there's no incarnated perspective. Just looking at some of your questions. Give me a moment. Someone is talking about a malignancy, and she has a cyst in her parotid gland behind the ear here. And that is, okay, it's a suspected malignancy rather. And she's asking, what is the deeper cause for this? He states, what is repressed within you that you do not wish to hear? Within malignancies, depending upon their location, there could be a deeper meaning and representation of something eating away inside of you, an emotion that is repressed so deeply that it begins to rot. Okay, we're just going to take one more question and then we're going to end. It's been an interesting channeling. Hold on a second. It's going to be about life purpose. The question is my current job in alignment with my spiritual purpose? And how, if yes, if not, can I be guided into which one does align and which one continues abundance? There is no one answer to your question. There is no one correct job. There is no one correct goal. It is all amongst your ideals in your heart. Choose when you state, my spiritual purpose, define it. How do you feel about your purpose? Your purpose comes from the Christ heart within you, from the divine sacred heart within all of us. Your purpose is a feeling, not an action, not anything that pays money unless you choose to align with that. the perception and perspective that one alignment, one job, one goal, one ideal is all there is throughout time is a man-made perspective. There are many alignments. If you ask and you feel in your heart that it aligns, you will know. If you feel that you are not abundant, this does not relate to being out of alignment all of the time. This could relate to the fact that you simply haven't stood forth fully in your mastery. Abundance requires full mastery. And then there is never a question. I can honor that teaching because I do teach something a little similar to that as well. And people come to me often and say, well, what is my purpose? Why, if I'm really aligning with my purpose, why am I not abundant? It is in baby steps. You'll have a little bit of mastery and a little bit of abundance. When you have more mastery of your life purpose, then there's more abundance. When you have full mastery, then there's a lot of abundance. So it's not an issue of abundance or not. It's an issue of your level of mastery. It's kind of a scale, and some people go from here to here, and that's wham, great mastery, but most of us take baby steps towards mastery. So don't assume that you are not in your mastery, that you're not in your alignment just because you're not rich. You see what I'm saying? Okay, guys, I've really enjoyed this channeling. I'm going to go ground this out. This has been a really loving but strange energy for me to connect the Christ mind to the Christ heart within me has been really unusual because I generally only operate with one or the other, and much like most humans, I perceive a separation. So for me to sit back today and try to connect two as if they're not separate has been a wonderful and unusual experience. I'm going to go take the rest of the day to process this. Thank you so much.